13.1 Introduction. Juvenile delinquency, though has been considered a social problem, basically it is a legal issue and a psychological problem. In the present day, however, delinquency is considered a misbehavior, and a socially extremely problematic issue. These youngsters indulge in thefts, burglary, aggression, violence and uncontrollable emotions, and quite a few also indulge in substance abuse, including alcohol and related substances. If uncontrolled, they may become more dangerous to the society and cause considerable damage to their family as well as to the society. These youngsters have to be forcibly kept under control by way of putting them into custodial care, such as sending them to children's home or detention centers for the young persons, thereby awarding punishment to the young offenders. As students of forensic psychology, we also need to focus on this very important topic. Thus, in this unit we will discuss about what juvenile delinquency is, the risk factors involved, assessment of juveniles and the role of a forensic psychologist in this context. 13.2 What is juvenile delinquency? Delinquency is defined as the crimes committed by children below the age of 18 years. In India, any person between the age of 7–18 years, who violate the provisions of the Children Act, is considered to be delinquent. And above 18 years the person is considered to be a criminal and treated at par with the adult criminals. In India, any person between the age of 7 and 18 years, who violates the provisions of the Children's Acts, the IPC and the CPO, will be considered as delinquent. Persons above this age are considered as criminals. These children, called as delinquent, commit many crimes from simple to highly dangerous ones. Not only delinquency is a social evil, but also it is unacceptable to society and its values. As they are still not of the mature age, that is less than 18 years, they are kept in juvenile homes, which are akin to jail, where these children are put through corrective measures and programs so as to change their behaviors that are harmful to themselves and to the society. There are two types of delinquents who are brought before the juvenile court, discussed as follows: A. Young persons who have committed a very serious crime like that of the adult and have to be tried as an adult in adult court. B. Those who indulge in status offense, viz., indulging in drinking before his age, skipping school, violating a local curfew law, etc. Normally, in the case of an adult offender, the adult court, under criminal justice system, pronounces punishment, whereas in the juvenile court, juvenile justice system, the youngster is not punished but sent for rehabilitation so that he/she mends his ways and becomes a useful and productive individual/citizen of the society. In order to keep these children from creating problems to the society, certain legal provisions have been made in the form of acts, named as the Children Act. These acts provide for the establishment of reformatory schools, and make arrangements for their treatment and rehabilitation. 13.3 Risk factors contributing to delinquency. Risk factor refers to any experience, environmental factors, typical events and circumstances, and personality traits of a person contribute to the probability of young persons to commit crimes. Delinquent behaviors are not caused by any single causative factor but a combination of factors in complex interactions such as biological, psychological and social factors. As the number of risk factors increase, so also the delinquent behaviors in children, though there is considerable variation in such behaviors from one youngster to another. The measures to be taken to eliminate the risk factors must take into account the developmental stage in which the youngster is, as delinquent and problem behaviors emerge differently in different children in different stages of their development. For instance, some youngsters show these delinquent behaviors at the time of adolescence, but give up the same as they grow up into adults. However, there are other youngsters who show these criminal tendencies at quite a young age and continue on to offend through their adulthood. There are certain risk factors which are not changeable in certain youngsters, as for example gender or genetic factors. The factors that are alterable include environmental factors such as the neighborhood condition and family dynamics. The latter two are rather difficult to change or control. The predominant factors contributing to delinquency include individual characteristics, social influences and community conditions. 13.3.1 Individual risk factors. Antisocial behavior manifested from childhood onwards increases the probability of the individual developing delinquency. Research has shown that those children who have indulged in antisocial behaviors such as burglary, thefts, violent attacks on others, destroying property or fire setting and so on, continue to become criminals as they proceed towards adulthood. On the other hand, children who do not indulge in any antisocial behaviors before pre-puberty appear to be less likely to develop antisocial or delinquent behaviors. Thus, early childhood may be an important developmental period which should be targeted for preventive program. Substance abuse is another major factor leading to delinquency. Even though experimenting with drugs in adolescent stage and earlier is common among some children, excessive use of the same and getting into the habit of drug abuse is a precursor to delinquency. Cognitive deficit is another individual factor that contributes to the increased probability of developing delinquent behaviors. Cognitive deficits include low intelligence quotient, IQ, poor verbal ability, learning disabilities, poor attention and concentration or lack of these. Cognitive development and social relationships are important aspects of development as these help children to abide by social and societal norms. If these are in deficit, children do not abide by any social norm or appreciate the same and thus develop the tendency to manifest delinquent behaviors. Psychological factors such as impulsivity, risk-taking behaviors, hyperactive tendency, poor self-control, difficulty in delaying gratification, low frustration tolerance, etc. are significantly associated with delinquent behaviors in children. These persons do not also solve problems through verbal means, but by physical attacks. Furthermore, these persons approach new stimuli impulsively and aggressively rather than with caution. These persons during kindergarten stage show high degree of restlessness, fidgeting and unable to sit in one place for a stipulated period of time. A few of these children also suffer from ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. The above-mentioned psychological characteristic features do indicate the probability of these children developing delinquent behaviors more than children who do not manifest any of these psychological characteristic features. Brain development is another individual risk factor that contribute to the development of delinquency. Adolescence is the time when there is marked development of various regions of the brain. Hence, neurological development during adolescence significantly affects the self-control, control of emotions and emotional regulation. In this, children may have neuropsychological deficits, such as anatomical, chemical and neurological abnormalities that are linked to delinquency. These abnormalities are due to the damage to a certain area of the brain caused by injury or by a variety of environmental factors such as poor nutrition, substance abuse and exposure to violence. Researchers have indicated that prenatal and perinatal complications are associated with delinquent behaviors in children. Thus, the complex interrelations among biological and psychological factors to a great explain the development of delinquent behavior in children. 13.3.2 Risk factors related to social influences. Under this, we will be considering family and peer influences contributing to delinquency. The child rearing practices followed in a family, the broken family, the inconsistent and lack of discipline, lack of parental supervision, neglect and rejection of children by parents, too large a family, and family dynamics of a negative nature are all some of the family factors that contribute to development of delinquency in children. Also, children who are victims of child abuse, sexual abuse etc. are at greater risk of developing delinquency. Aggression, antisocial behaviors in parents and siblings may also contribute to quite an extent in developing delinquent behaviors. Peer influence is another social factor that is associated with developing delinquent behavior. The social network of youngsters, especially during adolescence, is a very familiar phenomenon. However, if these peers themselves are substance users, or delinquents or indulging in unlawful activities, the friendship and association with such persons can lead a youngster also to delinquency. A youngster with delinquent tendency would, according to research, also seek persons who are themselves delinquent, thereby reinforcing their own selves in delinquent act. It has been noted that slightly older peer would have considerable influence on the younger adolescents, as there is a certain degree of hero worshipping of the older adolescent. This is all the more so in persons who have been rejected, who have lower self-esteem, who are also mild and somewhat timid, and who strive to be included in the peer group. Furthermore, an antisocial peer would influence antisocial behavior in the adolescents. Aggressive individuals who feel rejected by peer group are more likely to become delinquents than those who are part of a peer group. Generally, if the family environment is healthy and there is healthy relationship between parents and the adolescent person, peer influence would not be real bad. By and large, the youngster would turn to be more law-abiding than turning delinquent. 13.3.3 Risk factors related to community conditions. Community consists of neighborhood and school. Neighborhood influences the youngster in many ways, just as the school environment influences the individual's behaviors. There are two types of neighborhood, one disadvantaged neighborhood and the other affluent neighborhood. The social control and discipline in the disadvantaged neighborhood is extremely poor or almost non-existent. In such a neighborhood there is more of disorganization and people in general do not seem to abide by law and order. There is open aggression and youths are exposed to criminal behaviors. There is no monitoring of the youngsters or behavior of persons who come into conflict with law. In such neighborhood, if the adolescent is brought up, he/she would more likely to develop delinquent tendencies. 13.4 Role of forensic psychologist in delinquency cases. Like in the case of adult criminals, forensic psychologists play an important role in the case of juvenile delinquency also. In juvenile court, forensic psychologists attend to the youngsters who have come into conflict with law. They are concerned with rehabilitating the juvenile back into the community. There are various ways in which forensic psychologists work with juveniles. Forensic psychologists conduct forensic evaluation of the juvenile, providing information on the young person's emotional, behavioral and cognitive functioning. Secondly, they also provide psychological treatment interventions to both juvenile and his family which needs help. The aim is to ensure that the youngster does not commit any more unlawful acts and understand the need for changing their behaviors in a more positive direction. Furthermore, the forensic psychologists help the juvenile court to decide whether the court should refer the youngster for further treatment, or the crime committed by the youngster is so serious that he/she may be tried in an adult court than in a juvenile court. They also evaluate the child from a psychiatric point of view, whether the young person is suffering from any mental disorder and what are the possibilities that he/she may cause danger to the society by his behavior. In addition, they may evaluate the delinquent in terms of whether he/she can stand trial or whether he/she is appealing for insanity defense. Over the centuries, the juvenile justice system had undergone considerable change the world over. Presently high importance is given to the treatment and intervention as well as rehabilitation of the juvenile offender back into the society. Every effort is put into screening of the youngster for any substance abuse etc. and if necessary take the youngster for treatment. Also while the juvenile offender is in children's home, etc. assessing him/her for mental health problems and providing appropriate treatment are all given higher importance and focus. One of the important measures taken is that the juvenile justice system and in the juvenile court, mental health experts are included and many measures are introduced in the society to prevent the youngsters indulging in any unlawful activities. Forensic psychologists consider basically three issues, viz. A. The psychosocial maturity and the stage of development in which the youngster is at the time of being on trial for an offense committed by him/her. B. How much risk is present that the juvenile offender will indulge in criminal and unlawful activities in the future and C. The nature and extent of psychopathy and antisocial characteristics in the youngster. In juvenile justice court, the forensic psychologist highlights the youngster's mental health including psychopathic issues present in the youngster revealed in testing and interview, and also reports to the court the peer influence that had led to the youngster indulging in the unlawful activity, as well as the youngster's future orientation, the risk-taking behavior in the young person and the impulsivity that blinds the person to the fact that the activity he/she is indulging in is unlawful and he/she may be punished for it etc. Further, the forensic psychologists face a greater problem where the young juvenile does not take them seriously as the juvenile is made to go through many interviews. Further, the considerate behavior and the number of interviews taken of the youngster and the role of the psychologists are perceived by the youngster as if the forensic psychologist is desiring to be friendly and want to have a friendly relationship with him/her. This to quite an extent adversely affects the interaction with the young offender who escapes revealing the truth and facts of the case, taking things rather lightly though the crime committed by him/her is serious. The forensic psychologists also assist judges and lawyers in the juvenile court by providing them information about the personality of the offender, his/her mental status, emotional lability, cognitive functioning and his behaviors, which all when taken together help in taking the correct decision regarding how to deal with the young offender and what punishment will be appropriate, or whether the young offender should be sent for any treatment intervention and plan a suitable rehabilitation program, so that the young person does not resort to unlawful activities and remain a productive youngster, who would make use of the available educational and employment facilities and become a responsible citizen. Not only the forensic psychologist works with offenders, helps the lawyers and the court etc. They also take care of issues related to children who are victims of abuse, neglect and abandonment and children with special needs. These children are not only tested and case history taken to diagnose their problem more accurately, they are also taken up for treatment, guidance and rehabilitation. Children with special needs are also given help in terms of advocating on their behalf. Forensic psychologist plays a very important role in understanding the mind of the juvenile delinquent. For instance, they determine whether or not a juvenile should be tried as an adult offender if the crime is serious like murder etc. They also evaluate if the offender had a purposeful intent to commit the crime. Mens rea, in addition to evaluating the maturity level, educational attainment, past criminal history, medical history and disabilities if any, the emotional and developmental stage at which they are, as well as the environmental and social background of the offender. Forensic psychologist connects the human behavior with legal aspects of the case and the law of the land. The problem of juvenile delinquency and the many serious crimes that the youngsters are involved in today, render the society face sometimes horrific crimes. In all these cases, the forensic psychologists make assessment of the youngsters in regard to the psychopathology underlying the criminal behavior. Quite often children with conduct disorders manifest many other psychiatric symptoms and have to be thoroughly assessed by forensic psychologist before taking them up on treatment or refer the youngster for psychiatric treatment. It is important to ensure that the youngster after treatment and rehabilitation does not return to crime all over again. By and large it has been seen that the juvenile offenders who commit activities that are conflict with the law, give up such behaviors when they reach adulthood or 18 years of age and above. However, a few may continue on and may become adult offenders. These persons can be categorized into a group, which can be identified in terms of the delinquent behaviors being seen in them at a very young age. It has been observed that this group generally live in poor conditions, suffer from inadequate financial resources, family dysfunction, neglect and face extreme violence and abuse by their own family members and the people in the neighborhood, and in a large number of cases, there exists parental criminality. All these tend to render these youngsters indulge in criminality. When these children are brought before the juvenile court, the judge concerned may mandate assessment of any psychopathology underlying their delinquent behavior, and the forensic psychologist would be required to carry out the assessment and recommend suitable treatment if the disorder is treatable. The important role of forensic psychologist in juvenile delinquent cases is to determine the mental health history of the juvenile and his forward/her present mental status so as to provide the appropriate rehabilitation program and as well as to prevent repeat of such crimes occurring in future. Some of the risk factors in a youngster turning delinquent include neighborhood, family dysfunction, poor relationship with the caregivers from infancy onwards, the school and the negative experience etc., being a victim of bullying and so on. More importantly, family characteristics such as poor parenting skills, size of the family, discordant and dysfunctional family, child abuse and maltreatment, and the parents themselves being criminals. In addition, poor school performance, negative attitude towards school, weak social ties and company of antisocial peer group, drugs and community disorganization are all combined together contribute to juvenile delinquency. 13.5 Let us sum up. The focus of the present unit was on juvenile delinquency. Delinquency is defined as the crimes committed by children below the age of 18 years. In India, any person between the age of 7–18 years, who violate the provisions of the Children Act, is considered to be delinquent. And above 18 years the person is considered to be a criminal and treated at par with the adult criminals. The unit also discussed about various risk factors contributing to delinquency, including individual characteristics, social influences, community conditions. Lastly, the role of a forensic psychologist in delinquency cases was also explored.